My female 34 sister got married last week. When she got engaged 6 months ago, she told me she wanted me to be her bridesmaid. I agreed. How could I not? The other bridesmaids were all pretty rich. Sis and groom weren't planning on holding back on the wedding because they had a pretty big budget. The groom's from a wealthy family. There wasn't a problem until 3 months before the wedding when she and her friends, the other bridesmaids, were picking out dresses. The dresses cost $300 each and were so pretty, oh my god. They were pastel pink with yellow embroidered roses on them, handmade. I, female 21, am a college student, and I'm broke. I couldn't afford a dress that cost that much, especially since I was only going to wear it once. I told my sister immediately, so she said she'd pay $150, and I could pay the rest myself. She sent me the money, and since there was still 3 months before the wedding, she said I had to salvage something. Now, $150? That's like 2 weeks' worth of groceries. I decided to keep the money she'd given me to myself because I sure as hell wasn't going to spend another $150 on some dress. My sis never asked me about the dress again until a week before the wedding. I told her I hadn't bought it yet and spent it on things I actually needed. She was pissed, saying there wasn't enough time to order a new dress. She told me I couldn't be a bridesmaid without it. I didn't show up to the wedding, for obvious reasons. She called me after, asking me where I was and calling me an a-hole and a liar. What did I do that was remotely a-hole-ish? I'm broke. There's no way I could afford such an expensive dress. You're the a-hole. Your sister gave you money for the dress. You kept it and used it on other things. Then you didn't tell her you did that, or that you changed your mind about being a bridesmaid, and then just let her find out what you did a week before. I don't think this is real, but if it is, wow, you are definitely the a-hole. You're the a-hole. She sent you that money for a dress, not for you to spend, even on needs. And I'm confused. Why did you not go as a guest? Were you afraid she would ask for her money back? You should have said you can't even afford $150, and you were sorry you cannot be in the wedding. You're the a-hole. You stole your sister's money. When someone gives you money, and it's not a gift, which this wasn't, and you spend it on anything else other than what it was specified for, it's theft, which makes you a thief. Your sister is justifiably angry. Haha. I admit that my financial struggles were no one's fault but my own, particularly blowing through the thousands I could have saved in the army. And I acknowledge that. I'm not blaming her or anyone else for my past struggles. Those are my own fault. With that disclaimer out of the way, I didn't have any money, and I was on the verge of getting evicted years back. I knew my older sister lived a nice life, so I figured she'd help me out since she no doubt had the money. I was wrong. She said, "Your problems are your own to solve. I can't bail you out every time you're in trouble. I wish I could help, but this one is up to you." I took that pretty hard, and sure enough, I was out of work and out of a home, while she was living the high life. I've turned my life around and am in a much better place. She has hit a rough patch and hasn't been where she was for years. Her career, which started off well, was thrown off after she got pregnant and stayed home with them, even though her husband presumably didn't make as much. But I honestly don't know all the details, just that she was stressed out at work and wanted it. Her oldest son was in some sort of car accident and had to stay in the hospital and get some sort of treatment. But they never said what was wrong with him, just that they were left with a huge medical bill, $168K. But when they asked me if I could help, I'm sure I could. I said that that was a personal problem that she'd have to solve on her own. And now some of my family have literally left me text messages talking about how it's petty to hold on to her not paying my rent. Well, they're right. She didn't have to pay my rent, and I don't have to pay her son's medical bills. You're the a-hole. Before I say anything else, it's not because you aren't going to help pay. I don't actually care about that aspect. Accepting responsibility for blowing through all that cash would mean dropping the resentment towards your sister. The fact that you're still harping on that exact phrasing is a pretty clear indicator you still think you were entitled to have your rent paid. And if she had paid it, I'd be willing to bet you wouldn't have gotten your act together, because then the situation would have been subsidized. You have more work to do there. You're drawing the comparison between you blowing your savings on stuff you didn't need and a life-saving medical bill is both idiotic and petty. Those two issues are not remotely the same as far as financial responsibility goes, and you know it, so don't play dumb. She asked if you could help. You came up to her expecting her to cover your rent. Once again, these are not parallel situations. You don't have to pay anything. You also don't have to speak to your sister like a vindictive a-hole out for revenge. But here you are, choosing to behave like that. You're the a-hole. You left out of your post that you lost your rent money because you intentionally spent it on lottery tickets. It paints a very different light to your sister saying that she wasn't going to give you more money. Leaving out such important details from the post to justify your choice to be petty, which, to be clear, you have every right to do, is an a-hole move. Not the a-hole. It doesn't matter what you blew your money on, and it doesn't seem that you're comparing your financial issues to hers. Honestly, it doesn't matter what caused either of you to have financial difficulty. Your sister was right. She did not have to help you. You are right. You do not have to help her. I'm currently on a year break from work due to burnout. We've had to cut some costs to make it workable on his income alone. Now, I hate cleaning, and I'm not good at it. My fiancé has a totally different level of clean from me. Prior to my work gap, we hired a cleaner because housework caused arguments. We both paid towards the service, $230 a week. We have one joint account for household costs, and then our own separate accounts. Well, 5 months ago, the cleaning service we used increased their prices, and it went to $400 a week. My fiancé said he couldn't afford that, and we had 3 options. Once a month, no cleaner at all, or try to find someone online. I really like the company we use, and don't want to find someone else. He wanted to do no cleaner at all for a few months to save up money in our joint account that our household expenses come out of, and then hire a cleaner again. His reasoning for not being able to afford it is that it reduced the amount of money he has each month to put into his personal account, and he also gives me a bit each month, so I don't deplete all of my savings while I'm on break. The cleaner is a necessary household expense, and if that means he has less fun money to divide between us, then that's what has to happen. He said I could always get a part-time job to cover half of the new price, and I told him no. I feel like he'd be going back on our agreement to let me take a break, and he'd cover all our expenses while I'm recovering from burnout. Last week, he tells me he's going on a 3-day trip with his brother and their friend. I asked him if his brother is paying his way, and he said no. He was paying his share. I told him he couldn't go then. If he couldn't afford all our expenses, then he couldn't afford to go on a vacation. My fiancé got upset and said he could do with his money what he wanted because he was paying out of his own pocket, and then threw it in my face that I go to the spa, get my nails done, or have lunch with my friends once a week. I told him that's different because it's a one-time expense each week and not 3 days straight of spending money and not nearly as expensive. He went to work. I went on his computer, found the reservation for the cabin, and canceled it. After that, I hired a cleaner back on to be weekly coming from our joint account. The cost of that 3-day trip wasn't much more than the company's weekly rate, and we need a cleaner. My fiancé still doesn't see it that way. When he found out I canceled, he called me upset and said he wasn't coming home except to grab some stuff. He wouldn't talk to me, and I find that ridiculous because he needs to understand where I'm coming from. He's been with his brother for the last 4 days, and he says he isn't ready to talk about this until he calms down and clears his head. I think he's just overreacting and being selfish since he isn't thinking about our needs first. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I'm an awful person, I get it. No need for name-calling. I was wrong to ask him to reduce our fun money and not talk about the trip first. Yes, I go to a spa weekly. It's something I've been doing practically every week since I was a teen with my mom and aunt. You're the a-hole. Huge a-hole. I understand being burnt out, but a household cleaner is not a necessary expense. You had no right to cancel his trip. You're the a-hole. You aren't working, you don't clean, and you spend money on spas, lunches, nails, hair, etc., and can't give your fiancé 3 days with his money, and you canceled his trip behind his back? This isn't a partnership. You are using him. You've had a year-long break with no adult responsibilities. You are making no contributions to the household, but feel you have the right to cancel his plans and also spend his money on a house cleaner. Do him a favor and end the relationship and move out. Jesus, yes, you're the a-hole. He wants a 3-day break while you get a year. Think of how often you go get your nails done, and to the spa, and whatever other little expenses you deserve as a treat. Combine that, and see if his 3-day cabin adventure is still absolutely ridiculous enough for you to cancel behind his back. My husband, stepson, 14 male, and I all have Swiss citizenship. My daughter does not. In late 2019, several job opportunities came up for me, and a lot of business opportunities came up for my husband in Switzerland. As such, I made the executive decision to take a job in Switzerland, and my husband moved his business operations there as well. However, we felt my daughter, 15, would do better finishing her schooling in America, so we enrolled her in a boarding school. When the virus hit, there was some worries regarding whether or not Switzerland would close their borders anytime soon. My daughter was at boarding school but begged me to come back to the U.S. However, I realized that if I came back, I could possibly miss out on work or business opportunities if I'm gone for too long. I also did not want to leave my husband when he was stressed out about business. He travels within the country a lot, and my stepson went to a local school and was home often. So I wanted to make sure he wasn't lonely and had a close person to talk to, which my daughter had at her boarding school. My daughter ended up having a mental breakdown and ended up in the school's medical facility because she didn't eat for 4 days at the end of summer. She has barely communicated with me since. But this week, we started Zoom therapy. However, all she did during our first session was blame me for not coming home. I got angry and defended my actions, saying it was selfish of her to expect me to make a decision that would essentially leave the question of my career and marriage up in the air. And I told her she essentially wanted me to abandon a 14-year-old boy with a nanny, while his father was traveling for work, which he had teachers and students to socialize with where she was. My daughter got mad and told me she wanted to end the Zoom now. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. You are willing to abandon your daughter, but you don't want to leave your son with a nanny. You pretty much excluded her from the family, and then chose everyone else over her when she was crying out for help just before mental breakdown. Too bad there are no boarding schools in Switzerland, or ways to get your daughter residency. Oh well. You're the a-hole. Hopefully you can maintain your relationship with your stepson so that you have one child who wants you in their life. You're the a-hole. Your husband is an adult who can take care of himself. Your stepson is 14 and capable of doing some things for himself with some supervision. You left your daughter alone in another country in the middle of a virus. You were to blame, and it is unlikely you will ever be able to rebuild the relationship between you and your daughter. Even before the virus, you left her alone at a boarding school while you immigrated to an entirely new continent. You abandoned her for theoretically 3+ years. I genuinely hope she can get past this and grow to be a good and healthy person, despite your so-called parenting. My daughter, 13, and stepson, 11, have not gotten along since my daughter moved in. She had previously lived with her mother, but I got default custody after her mother turned one of her 24-hour disappearing acts into a never-coming-back one. My daughter and stepson go to the same middle school, and we're both running for student council vice president. There was tension in the house, and my wife told my stepson that if he won, we would go out to celebrate. My daughter asked if this applied to her as well, since he wasn't her only competitor, and my wife said, of course. The campaign got pretty stressful for the both of them. Then the votes come in, and my daughter wins by 4 votes. However, because somehow the one person who ran for treasurer this year dropped out because of grades, my stepson was offered that position. He saw it as a really pitiful consolation prize and was angry that he had to take orders from my daughter. I felt very bad for my stepson, and he and his mother, who is also very type A, was very upset, even though of course my wife congratulated my daughter. My stepson refused to be comforted by the fact that older kids get more easily elected, because they know more people, and his mother even offered to take him to her law office and give him some responsibilities, saying that was better experience than student council would ever be. My stepson then said, "Please tell me you're not trying to rub it in my face by taking us to dinner now." My wife also looked really reluctant to go to dinner. I finally tell my daughter that we weren't going to be going to dinner because her stepbrother was very upset by the turn of events, and we need to take his feelings into consideration, and that I was impolite to gloat. That all happened Friday. My daughter ended up crying, and even now, Sunday night, she still is mad at all of us. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. Massive, massive, massive you're the a-hole. Your daughter worked her butt off to win the spot, and you let her whiny, jealous, sore loser stepbrother ruin the celebration for her accomplishment. You showed your daughter that her hard work and accomplishments means nothing to you, and showed your stepson that throwing a fit will get him whatever the duck he wants no matter who it hurts. Terrible parenting. Absolute garbage. You have one and only one chance to fix this. You tell your daughter you ducked up majorly, and you are incredibly sorry, and will try your best to not do things like that again, and that she now gets 2 dinners out. One to celebrate, and one as an apology. Then sit your wife and stepson down. Tell them both that every accomplishment deserves to be celebrated, and that all 3 of you owe your daughter an apology, and you will be taking her out for the 2 dinners. If they choose to apologize, they can go with you. If they refuse to apologize, they can keep their sore loser butts at home. Then get in family therapy ducking ASAP. You're the a-hole. So your child, the same one abandoned by her mother, gets her celebration canceled so her father can console his stepson. Someone who has a mother to fill that role. Huge, 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 huge a-hole. One of the 2 kids that lives in your house was going to win, and one was going to lose. Did you not foresee there might be some hard feelings? You promised both you'd celebrate whoever won, and now that the kid that lost is pitching a fit, you're rewarding that poor sportsmanship by not celebrating the other kid's win like he promised. Good job reinforcing bad behavior, Dad. Nothing you described indicates one kid was gloating, just that one kid won, and expected you to celebrate that like he promised. This was a great opportunity to work on sportsmanship and how you handle winning and losing. Instead, you're rewarding bad behavior and teaching the opposite of what you want your kids to learn. You're the a-hole.